Hey, everybody. I'm Chris Metzler, Director of Programming at the Green Film Festival of San Francisco. Thanks again for being here. While we're programming the film festival, we're kind of looking for lots of diversity in regards to types of stories, ways of stories, and we don't always run across cool narrative films that kind of fit with us. But when we read about Trans-Amazonia, we wanted to take a look at it and quickly fell in love. And we're so lucky to be able to kind of share it here with you. And we're lucky enough to have one of the stars of the film here, actor Jeremy Shido. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it.
And for a little bit of a context, Jeremy, in addition to being an actor, is also a documentary filmmaker by trade. So, kind of, we'll probably get a little bit of like wearing that hat in the sense of how that approaches your acting.
Uh,
Can you tell us a little bit about maybe a good place to start is like when you first read the script for the film, what was the thing that kind of first kind of excited you about being part of this project and particularly this role?
yeah, well, so that the way that the entire thing came about was kind of crazy. So there had been another actor that had been cast in the role of Lawrence Byrne, who sort of at the last moment had to drop out. And they were the entire crew, cast and crew were all in Brazil about to shoot. They were ready to shoot, and so they had to figure out who they had access to in a short amount of time, who they had on speed dial within the kind of the crew and the producers and all the people sort of for actors around the world that they could just call up so they didn't have to go through their agents because it would have taken too long. And it just happened to be that one of the crew members, the sound engineer, Dana, had worked with me and was a big fan of mine, and he put my name forward. And so the way that it came to me is that I was actually in the middle of editing another film, my own film. It was a very painful process. I was exhausted. It was a Saturday. I didn't have to work, and I was really excited that I could get up in the morning. Everybody in the house was asleep. I was going to make some pancakes. I was going to make coffee and orange juice. I was going to make it all really nice and just like let it all go. And then I turned my phone on to like listen to the news or maybe listen to some music, and there were like probably about 45 messages on WhatsApp. My phone just went bing, 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 from mostly from France and Brazil. And so I figured that I had been hacked. And then, but Dana, the one of the messages was from him. And so he said, Jeremy, you're about to get about 45 messages from all these people. Don't worry, you're not hacked. It's real. I'm in Brazil. There's this role. You're the only one that can play it. I already told them to put the phones down for anybody else, and you're the only one. So just when they reach out to you, just answer them. And I was like, oh, fuck. Okay. I was like, there goes the pancakes. And so I reached out, and then I talked with Sophie, the producer, and she said, here, listen, we want to send you the script, and we want to send you a scene that we need you to put on tape, a couple of scenes they need to put on tape. And so I was on Saturday, and I sat down and I read the full script. And I was immediately enthralled that the complexity of the world, the lushness of the world, and then this really complex relationship, father-daughter relationship. I have a 10-year-old daughter now, 8 at the time. And I was sort of looking out into the future and sort of imagining this kind of thing. And it was I think it's the borderline between exploitation and love, of capitalizing on a situation out of need, and then finding yourself falling actually in love with the person that you're capitalizing on, and then somehow you're involved, you're locked in this sort of battle. It felt like it was a kind of a classic battle, and it was a classic kind of relationship, sort of father-daughter relationship at some level. And so I read it, and I read the scene, and I had there's a preaching scene at the beginning of the film, and a bunch of my family are Baptist ministers. And I grew up in Detroit, and in like a Black Baptist and African Methodist Episcopalian churches, and I just knew this universe very well. And so I got to read for the scene, and as I dug in and started to read and started to call the Holy Ghost in this sort of like way, it was just sort of it just kind of sucked me in, and so I did the audition and sent in the tapes, and that night I got a call from Pia, and Pia, told me that I had to do it. I just told her, well, I'm finishing this other film. I can come in a couple of weeks. She's like, no, we're going to start shooting. He's like, but you have to do it. You're the only one who can do it. And so she knew how to flatter me. And the script, I thought was wonderful. Was really, really, really special. And the character was extraordinary. And so she cajoled me into it. And on Wednesday, I was on a flight to Brazil for 2 months. So.
Oh, wow. Talk about serendipity, it's like, but yeah, the way that you capture the role is just so really great and dynamic. I wonder, given the kind of unique way that, the process for the film started for you, I was going to ask you, I was like, oh, well, like, what surprised you most during the making of the film? And I can imagine that there were lots of surprises given the way that things started. What are some of the challenges working, in that kind of, environment, I guess, of like, in the sense of like, being in, the rainforest and things like that. How do you think like the sense of place kind of affected the way that you approached the character?
I mean, the place defined everything. I defy anyone to spend months in the rainforest without having without being humbled, without realizing that your best laid plans are fleeting at best, and impossible. And that you are at the mercy of forces that are just larger than you at all moments. And I think that had a huge effect on that physical environment had a huge effect on just embodying this character, but also in embodying the world, and then on production itself. You have a limited number of days, and you have an ambitious schedule. It's an ambitious shoot with an incredible crew, but things happen. Accidents happen, and you start to realize that the rainforest has its own designs. And there's something about filmmaking which is, I think, dependent upon forcing your will on the world, right? And then having the world push back and be uncooperative. And so there are massive battles of ego that are in play. And I think that a lot of the sort of the story that's written into the script actually started to manifest in the making of the film itself, sort of the relationship between loggers and the indigenous nations that we were working with, to sort of this to the folly of trying to move people through this story. There were a number of events that took place that looked like they was going to derail the entire film, and somehow, in really fascinating ways, we pulled through. But really, at a certain point, it came down to the Assarini Nation kind of repairing some ruptures in the ecosystem of the forest, to allow us to continue shooting in their worldview. And then there was a sort of a Bolsonaro type that was a big supporter of the film, who in his own way, in his own sort of slightly thuggish way, secured us being able to continue shooting when it looked like maybe we weren't going to be able to. So you sort of had these two competing forces that are actually in that place at each other. And these are things that I had no idea that I was going to encounter. You know, there was like, I had to go through the script and think about motivation and think about lines and think about, do we change that line? And how do we, what did the relate? But the moment we were there, and the fact that the forest would eat you at any point, and that these worlds were in conflict, that are you know, that are truly in conflict there in the place that we're shooting, are the same conflict that's sketched in the film itself, and that was wild. That was a wild thing.
Oh, very cool. And I guess curiosity. So, you know, as a, you know, documentary filmmaker also, how do you think, you know, your experiences as a documentary filmmaker shape the way that you then approach a character in acting in like a fiction film, but then also how are your experiences in a fiction film as an actor? How does it, like when you came back to the film that you were editing, like how does that kind of, you know, shape your perspective, I guess in both art forms?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I don't necessarily see myself as a documentary filmmaker. I see myself as a filmmaker, and I see that a lot of the processes. When I work with people, I mean, my latest film is called Sons of Detroit, and I'm central in the film. I'm front and center. I have a couple of other films where I don't appear whatsoever. In this particular one, I'm at the center of it. But in all of the films, I have this that I've worked on, both long form and short form, and whether they be documentaries or nonfiction or fiction. I believe that I am I'm in a process of collaboration with not just the crews, but also anybody who's in front of camera, right? And so that I'm creating and defining and finding the story with the subjects that I'm working with, and it's an unfair power dynamic. And that has to be laid bare at some level. I'm the one who tells the story. I'm the one who shapes them. But it's their lives, or some version of their lives, or some version of what they want to present of their lives, that it becomes the material with which, you know, that I shape, and I have to shape it in concert with them. And so there's a kind of a constant give and take in that process for me as a director with subjects, with actors. You know, I have an editor that I work with who says the only difference between documentary and fiction films is that in documentary, the actors don't get paid, right? But
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting about, you know, trying to imagine myself as like, how does it influence me as an actor? You know, I began as an actor and a dancer, and so that's sort of my home base, and I feel like that's how I actually approach directing, is in this collaboration with the people, this sort of dance with the people that I'm filming. So coming back to acting after directing, I think it's there are a couple of things. One is all of the shit that goes wrong in the production, I have nothing to do with it. There's nothing I can do. That's somebody else's problem, and it's so wonderful that I have to show up. I have to do my piece as well as I possibly can. I have to be supportive of everybody else, but when everything falls apart, the producers and people, I don't have to be in any single one of those meetings. I can just be in this universe. At the same time, you know, there are times when we're shooting where you realize that, like, I have to work in dancing with the cinematographer, and so that I may have my sense of what the scene is, but I will, I know at some level what they need to get, and so I know where to put myself, or I can help them and still stay within character in those moments, right? And I think that has a little bit to do with the knowledge of what it's like on the other side of the camera, of what, you know, and sort of comes into play as I sort of dance. And then I also know where I can trust that they will catch me, that I can fly, and that Pia, for example, will give me the directions that she needs, and she'll pull me back or she'll direct me, but I just go for it. And then she'll sort of shape me. And there's a certain kind of trust in that because I also know that role as well. I find it really interesting to go back and forth between the two roles as a director and as an actor. I just got back. I was shooting a series in London 3 days ago. Where I play a Russian bomb maker. It was fabulous to just be doing that, especially while I'm in the final phases of post on Sons of Detroit. And it's just fun. It's just a fun sort of abandon, but at the same time, constantly cognizant of, where the camera is, how you're moving in these strange spaces and what the needs are of the day. And how to facilitate that in the best way possible, while trying to stay, grounded and true to the moment and what's happening in that moment as an actor.
Well, very cool. It was great to see what you brought to the screen and the story, and it's make a wonderful opening night film here at the Green Film Festival of San Francisco. And I always kind of try to remind our audiences that we're so lucky that filmmakers like Pia, share their films early in their stage with us and our audiences. And so our role is to kind of go out and talk about these films, whether, either be after dinner or the backyard barbecue or on social media. So everybody, please kind of talk about this film after you see it. And then also, Jeremy, I'm sure there are folks that are going to be wanting to kind of follow your career and things that you're doing. Is there a good place for folks to track you down at?
Yeah, you can, I'm on Instagram, at Jeremy Shido. You can find me there. I have a website, and it's shido.org. Those are sort of the easiest ways to just kind of keep track of what I'm doing. Instagram for good or for bad is where everybody's funneling me to engage with people at the moment. So that would be the easiest way. And then if you want to shoot me an email, you can shoot me an email through my website. So and generally, if I'm able to, I generally respond. So.
Well, very cool. Well, thank you again. I'm glad that things worked out the way they did with the film. It's just really special. And thanks again, Jeremy.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled that it's the opening night film. I wish we could all be there. I was conceived in San Francisco, so I have a special it has a special place in my heart. So I'm very happy that the film is screening, and thank you for giving it some attention.
Yeah, most definitely. It's well worth it. Have a great day, man.
Okay, yeah, great. You too.